G'day everyone, welcome to Get Lost with a Travel Guide, and this episode we have Carly Söderström. Now, she's a Melbourne-based photographer who last year, during all the lockdowns, particularly in Melbourne, she did a rant, a very well-orchestrated, articulated speech on social media, and it blew up to 40 million views. It got her on A Current Affair and many news channels because she represented all the impacts from small business. And I personally think it had a flow-on effect to actually opening things up into Australia. She has photographed Jordan Peterson. She's got 40,000 followers on Instagram. She's a bloody superstar. And I really hope you enjoy this episode. And we're recording. We are live. G'day, Carly. It's thank you for choosing to join on this podcast, and we're going to be talking about a whole bunch of things. Now, we've just spoken for like a minute, so we've known each other for such a long time.
Feels like it.
Yeah, but I'm one of those people who've been come across you a year or two ago now.
Mm-hmm.
You did a video. I think it was on Facebook. I might have seen it. And it really hit me because I was a small business owner as well in the tourism space. And lockdowns, international customers is what I've been looking after. And lockdowns just didn't really, align with it that well. But you made a video, and I think I watched it like 5 times, and I thought I couldn't have articulated it better. And as a consequence, it just went viral.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, how do you summarize that journey?
Mate, it's weird. It all I can say is weird. It was done out of just sheer frustration and on my part. Like I think a lot of people thought I'd planned that. And how do you plan something so raw to go viral? Like, you can't force people to resonate with you. I just had a gutful, and I think it was Melbourne was either going into our 4th or 5th. Like, I can't keep up with how many lockdowns we had, but it was just out of just like exasperation of just going, this isn't right. This is cruel. This is not the right way to be handling it. And I just literally put my phone down and just said what I wanted to say. And I kind of just posted it and didn't think much of it. And I told like my small community to share it, but I thought maybe a couple of thousand views, if that. I think the first time I checked, it had gone like 100,000 views in like an hour, and I was like, oh shit. And then within 24 hours, it was over 1 million. I was like, oh, damn. And then once it broke the 2 million views, I was like, uh-oh. Do you know what I mean? Like, uh-oh, that's a lot of eyes. And firstly, the press loved it. And they like, this girl's speaking for us, whatever. But shortly after that came the backlash and all the people who disagreed with what I was saying. And as the media does, they dig up what they can on you to slander you. And they did just that. And then I got all the death threats and the hate mail and yeah, mate, the whole thing. It was wild.
How? Your video was good. It was sending like what I thought it was an excellent message. You articulated very well. How could you possibly get a death threat over that?
Well, I think what happened was a lot of people didn't because I didn't say the right things, right? I wasn't talking about the vaccination. I wasn't talking about people dying and all that sort of stuff. Like, throughout the pandemic, there were certain narratives that you kind of had to parrot. And if you didn't, you were the bad person. And I became the bad person because I didn't touch on any of that. I just said, hey, small business. Let's look at this from a broader perspective. And there were a lot of people, particularly in Melbourne, that thought I was trying to encourage people to go against government guidelines, that I was trying to discourage anyone from being safe and doing the right thing. And yeah, just like with everything in 2023, we're polarized, aren't we?
Yeah, like I did, excuse me for the listeners. Yeah, I got a bit of a frog in my throat. I've been battling a cold. So no, I haven't been smoking packs a day. This is just how I sound at the moment. But I did a little bit of homework like 2 hours ago. I just Googled your name and typed in YouTube. And I didn't realize you're actually on Channel 7, Channel 9, and Current Affair. That comedy show.
Yeah. Oh, mate.
What happened?
It was bad. It was really bad. So essentially, I mean, the long short story of it, is my ex-business partner, who is very signed up paid member of the Greens, came out and said that I had started a GoFundMe to pay back debts in my old company. I had a liquidated company that he was a business partner in. He failed to mention that particular bit. He acted like he'd never met me before, but he put out this narrative that I was trying to do a grift, which is all bullshit and wasn't true. The person who started the GoFundMe has their own YouTube channel that was like enjoying the fame that came with it, you could say. It was just a wild 24 hours news cycle. And I think what happened, I mean, you're not Melbourne based, are you?
No, in Newcastle.
Newcastle, yeah. So in Melbourne, the COVID thing, obviously, like we're lockdown city, there were people who were so far up Daniel Andrews' ass. And anyone that was going against the grain and potentially threatening, the COVID safety that we had was considered an outsider. And I think they just wanted a reason to squash me because, at the end, the video got 40 million views. And that's a lot of eyes. And I think what they saw is like, this is a potential for things to come undone. We're going to squash this girl as quickly as we can. And that was the narrative they came out with, that I apparently had started a GoFundMe to pay back old debts for a liquidated company. Now, anyone in business knows that liquidation means, hey, there is no debt. But the Daily Mail don't care. Their journalists apparently don't understand business. And my business partner put out a video against me and failed to mention that he was my business partner. And then the guy who started the GoFundMe built up his own social media on the GoFundMe. So the whole story was bullshit, but no one cared, if that makes sense. They just wanted to do the biggest damage they could to me. And, 2 years later, it's still sort of like there's a bit of cloud around me, which is frustrating to say the least.
Where's the cloud? You strike me as a nice, honest person. And that video, you made good points. You made very good points.
Thank you. I think so. And I think that's why it went viral. I don't, a lot of people are like, oh, she was a grifter. She was trying to be this con woman. I was like, you guys are basically saying that either I'm an Oscar-winning actress with the ability to do something like that and know that I was going to get 40 million views. Like, that's impossible. How many videos go out on the internet every minute of every day?
How long was the video? How long did it go for? How many minutes?
15 minutes, I think. 15 minutes.
You can't act a whole dramatic scene for 15 minutes in one take. Like, even the world's best actors would probably struggle to pull that off.
And that's the thing, and I think that's why it went viral, because it was raw and it was straight off the cuff. And I've never had an issue with articulating myself. I'm someone that is very confident, and I say what I mean and I mean what I say. And I know that's not particularly common. A lot of people sort of get flustered when they're talking to camera or they're having to talk to people and articulate yourself. I think that's, a gift that I have, which I'm grateful for. But, when I did that video, it was, my whole network is small businesses. Everyone I know is a small business owner, and they were getting crushed. And then it had such a ripple effect. It's like everyone thought it was economic stress. Like, everyone was like, oh, all you care about is finances. And it's like, the worst stress you can put someone in is financial stress, because it ripples across every factor of your life. If all of a sudden you cut off someone's ability to be able to generate income for themselves, it affects their living expenses. It affects their headspace, their mental health. It flows onto their family. It flows onto their friends. And this is what frustrated me the most about the lockdowns, is that people didn't realize just how detrimental they were to the mental health of most people. It was like, oh, you're doing this to save grandma. You're doing it because it's the right thing. I'm like, the right thing for who? The right thing for who? Because what we're doing is putting people so far behind and making people destitute and full of despair. And you didn't just do it for a month or two. You did it for 2 years, 2 full years. And that's the thing that just did my head in. And so when I did that video, like I said, I think it was lockdown 4. I can't remember, but I was just like, you can't do this again. You can't keep cutting off people's ability to generate income.
Yeah.
Yep. Sorry.
No, sorry, I'm the frog in my throat again.
But what I realized throughout the whole experience was like the genuine lack of empathy people have for the rest of their humanity. Do you know what I mean? Like, the average person is so self-centric. What they are fixated on is themselves, and everything in their periphery is negligent, right? Like no one cares. It's not until people feel those impacts firsthand that they start to care. And what you're seeing now with the environment that we're heading into, we are in a recession. No one's called it. You're seeing interest rates going up. You're seeing record high inflation, all that sort of stuff. The cost of living is going up. These are all the flow-on effects for the lockdowns. This is direct response. And now these people who told me that I should just shut up and not have my job for 2 years and shut up and stay home and, you know, stop caring about the economy and stop caring about money. These are the people who are now screaming blue murder that interest rates are going up and that inflation's high and that their electricity and gas bills are going up. So, you know,
Have you ever
it's
thought
wild
about being
time,
a
isn't it?
politician?
Sorry?
Have you ever thought about being a politician?
I get asked that, I reckon, every day. I think I can do more damage outside of politics. I really do. And I mean, I'm not too sure how much attention you pay to world politics. I'm particularly invested in American politics at the moment, more so because it sets the tone for us coming in the next, you know, we're about 3-4 years behind America. And what you're seeing is this cataclysmic divide between people, right? You're either 100% this or you're 100% that. We've lost the ability for nuance. We've lost the ability to be able to have conversations and agree to disagree. And I think politicians are fueling that fire. And purely for political gain, by the way, I don't think they feel like that's inherent value to themselves. It's more so, oh, if we do this, we'll get reelected. If we do this, we'll hold the power. And we're seeing that very much with the Democrats and the Labor Party. I mean, I think every state in Australia is now Labor except Tassie now, which means that they're the best of a bad bunch. And there's a lot of people that feel disenfranchised. So, I mean, if I was to go into politics, I'd have to play that game. I'd have to toe the party line. I'd have to say the right thing, follow the narrative. I feel like I could be more destructive, much more destructive outside of it.
Well, it just sort of reminds me in a way. I watched the Shane Warne documentary, and he talks about like because all he wanted to do was be an Aussie rules player, and he never made it. But he just had this gift of spin, and then 18 months later, played for Australia. And he described he never chased cricket; cricket found him. Like not chased politics. Maybe politics has found you. Maybe you got this natural gift to, as you said, you can just stick the cameras on and really deep dive into a really complex issue with a lot of confidence, and you're extremely articulate and intelligent. And I think you've done a bit of study. Like I know you're a photographer, but how did you get to that?
Good question. Yeah, I think a lot of it is I've been an entrepreneur since I was a little kid. I was the person that would go to my next door neighbor's house and pick their roses and then try and sell them to a neighbor down the street. Like I've always had that weird inclination to be like, if I do this, I'll get X out of it kind of thing. You know, that's why I say entrepreneurs are born, they're not made. It takes a certain level of charisma and confidence to be an entrepreneur. But I did go to uni. I did all that sort of stuff. So I finished high school, went straight to uni. I did visual communication and design, but that had a dose of art history with it. So my major was art versus pornography, which was interesting given where we are in 2023. But yeah, well, that's a whole different conversation.
Yeah. I know. Like.
I did not perceive OnlyFans to be a thing. But anyway, you know, I was a graphic designer and I had my own freelance company aside working in the actual creative industry because, you know, whilst you're working for someone else, you're getting hands-on, tangible, practical experience, right? And I needed that coming straight out of uni. You don't know anything. You think you do, but you don't. So I was aware that I needed to get experience and work under people. So I was doing that, but at the same time, you know, I was doing heaps of freelance on the side for my friends and local businesses. And then I fell into CrossFit. And again, you know, I was like, oh, there's an opportunity here. And I started making t-shirts and that grew into a big clothing company, which is what I did for 10 years. And at the end of, I think it's like 2018, I realized I was doing all the photography for the brand and I loved it. Whenever I picked up the camera, I realized, hang on a minute, I'm enjoying this way more than anything else. And I'd find a reason to have a shoot. You know, I was like, we don't need to shoot this new collection. We've already shot it twice. Let's do it again. You know, I bought my first proper DSLR in 2015, I think. And I shot on auto for 2 years because I was running the brand. And every time I'd look into a photographer to hire, I realized how expensive they were. I was like, holy, they're outside of our budget. We can't afford that. I was like, hey a minute, why don't I invest that into a camera? Just do it myself. It can't be too hard. It's actually really hard. But, again, learning on your feet, being in an industry, whilst, sort of over here growing this hobby side of me. And yeah, end of 2018, I was like, I want to do this. This is what
Mm.
makes me happy. So it started to transition, and then of course COVID came, as you know. But I think what you said before about politics chasing me and whatever. I think photography was chasing me the whole time. It was always there. As a graphic designer, you always need strong visuals. Photography is a huge part of it. And then as a brand, you also need photography. So it's like, hello, I'm over here waiting for you to step into me. And when I did, it was like, oh my gosh, this just makes sense. This just clicks, It feels intuitive. It feels inherently me. And it doesn't feel like work.
Well, how did you end up crafting your skills to a point? Surprising to hear you, like 2015 is not that long ago. But you end up photographing Jordan Peterson. How? How did you get that connection?
Well, I'm not one to take no for an answer. That's how. Again, it comes down
Really?
to being
Nah.
Understatement, right? It comes down again to being charismatic and confident. And they're two traits that I feel like a lot of people lack today, which makes me really sad. We live on our phones, we live on the internet. We don't have time to develop that interperson connection as much as we used to. And I hate to sound like I'm getting old, but it's the part of my childhood that I remember, like having to go and have conversations with people and making friends the old-fashioned way. And confidence is that belief in yourself, like you just know that you can do this. So I've always been pretty savvy on the socials, so I was trying to.
Sorry. Yeah. No.
I was gonna say, yeah, I've always been savvy on the socials, so I was like, all right, I'm gonna track down Jordan Peterson, and he's not an easy man to get in contact with, let me tell you.
Well, he's got millions of followers. Like, how do you stand out from millions of followers?
Right. It's actually, it's funny. It's only in hindsight that I realized, hang on, Carly, that was actually a pretty big deal that you shot Jordan Peterson. You should probably, have enjoyed that a little bit more. But I found I shouldn't give away my secrets, but through some internet sleuthing, I found his podcast producer, and then I found him on Instagram, and then looked through his followers, and I found the social media content creator for Jordan Peterson, and then went through his followers, and that was a dead end. I was like, okay, well, I've got two connections. So then I went and looked at these companies that they worked for. I went on LinkedIn and looked at who worked for those companies. I sent out some emails, hit lots of dead ends, kept going. I think I sent easily 60, 70 emails. And what I say about
did you say 60 to 70?
Yeah, emails to different people. Yeah.
Wow.
And I think this is where a lot of people go wrong today, because 60 to 70 emails, yeah, it's a lot of work. It took me ages. But
after
look at the
50, why just go, that's I'll give
up. That's what most people do. That's what most people do. And I guess that's why most people don't shoot Jordan Peterson. But eventually I got his assistant and his direct assistant, who's also named Jordan. And I was like, hey, I'm Carly. I'm a Melbourne portrait photographer. I've been watching Jordan Peterson for years, and I wanted to offer you, gift you a portraiture session, to say thank you for all the valuable content that you've given me over the years, because I always believe that you've got to give before you take. And I have absorbed so much of Jordan Peterson's content for free on YouTube and whatnot, podcasts. I've bought 2 of his books, but I was like, I feel sort of indebted to him in a weird way. And they said yes, which is wild. But they gave me an all-access pass to Rod Laver Arena, and they said that Jordan would go on, do his speech, and then he would come off quickly just to have a breather, have a drink. That's when I'd shoot him, and then 5 minutes later, he had to go back out and do his meet and greet. They're like, you'll probably get 5 minutes with him. I was like, oh my God, what can you do in 5 minutes?
What'd you do? How do you prepare for that? How do you make those 5 minutes as juicy as possible?
I think I had the experience. I just had to believe in myself. I was like, all right, let's do this. So I packed up one light, one softbox, and I took my camera gear. And I arrived early, like super early at Rod Laver, and they're like, "Wow, you're keen." I was like, "I need to see this room. I just need to see what I'm working with." And so they walked me underneath, and I think it's like the left. If you're looking at the stage, you go out the left, and that's kind of like the green room and where they all hang out. And it's ugly. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I mean, it does the job, but it's not where I would have chosen to shoot him. Right, the wallpaper that you see in the photos, like I would prefer that not there. But you do what you can with what you have, right? And then all the chairs had like all these patterns, and then Jordan was wearing that blue and red
Oh,
suit, and I
yes,
was
that
like,
very iconic. It looks like the
yeah,
Joker in a way.
yeah, and I was like, there is so much going on. This is going to be the worst shoot ever because I would much prefer like less textures, less colors, whatever. But that's fine. Work with what you've got. And I heard his voice coming through the corridor, and I was like, oh my god, that's him. Be cool. And as soon as he walked in, I just snapped, and I was like, all right, business mode, let's go. Walked out. He's really tall, by the way. He's about 6'3" and very lanky. He's all arms and legs, a bit like a daddy long legs. And I was expecting like you know bombastic, like a little bit arrogant, a little bit mean. And what I got was the most gentle, considered, like mild, meek man. Like he was so nice. And he took my hand and he's like, "You're the photographer. It's so lovely to meet you." And I was like,
You're
and
like,
then,
fan
I said,
zone.
yeah. And I was like, you cannot fangirl people like that because you just get kicked out. So I
Yeah.
was like, all right, come over. And I had choreographed some poses I wanted him to go through. So in my head, I was like, we'll do that pose for 20 seconds, and I'll move him, then I'll move him, then I'll move him. And he just wanted to have a chat to me. So he slowed me down, actually. He was like, oh, what are you doing? How did you come here? And blah, 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 blah. And so we started having a bit of a chit chat. And I was like, oh, Jordan, just cross your arms, go like this, whatever. And at the end of the shoot, sorry, between the shoot, he kept doing this weird thing with his neck. And I don't know why. It just flew out of my mouth. Like, it's just Aussie humor, I guess. I was like, Jordan, is your neck broken? He's like, what? I was like, you keep doing this. And he's like, oh, I didn't even realize. And then he laughed. And that's when I got that funny photo that is now his
Ah,
profile picture. So
yeah,
he's very
well done.
serious. He's doing these ones. He's like this. And when I asked him if his neck's broken, he just laughed. He was like, and you'll see it in his profile picture. And yeah, then we went on and on and on. And at the end of it, he gave me the most amazing compliment. He's like, the way you commanded this room, you're going to go really far. And I was like, thanks, Jordan. And then I wanted to ask him for a selfie. And I was like, no, be cool, no selfies. And he's like, we should
Yeah.
get a picture. And I was like, yeah, we should. And then we got our selfie. And anyway, I was all out of that room very quickly, and off I went, and sort of shaking afterwards. And the gravity of what happened just hit me. And in the taxi home, I was like, I posted the selfie, and I went, oh, amazing. And then it was just one of those weird moments where I was like, a year before, I was getting like torn apart on social media and by current affair, and then a year later, I'm
And
shooting Jordan
yeah,
Peterson.
with your idol, one of your idols. Yeah. What
Yeah,
a
and
uh,
I was going to say, I think the lesson that is in that for everyone is that you define who you are, not other people. Other people will
mm.
try, but it's really up to you as to how you want the world to see you.
I think you've done really well. Like, people meet their idols or a celebrity and they freeze up and they don't know what to
Mm.
say and they fan zone and they all can think of, can I have a photo? Versus like, why not just converse with that person? Like, hey, how's your day? Like, you can have
Yeah,
a moment together and actually have a conversation with that someone instead of just give me a photo. Like, so it
and
seems like you had your moment as well.
yeah, and that's what they want really as well. I mean, I was watching an episode of Jordan on the Diary of a CEO podcast yesterday, actually, and he had a real moment with Steven, and he sort of teared up by the end, and he was like, I can't remember how they started the conversation, but he's like, you could just ask me how I am. And then
Mm.
Steven says, how are you? And Jordan sort of wells up, and he goes, very few people ask me that. And I was like, oh, I should have given him a hug. I wanted
Carly,
to hug him. I felt
Carly,
sorry.
how are you?
Oh, I'm okay. Thanks, Ben. How are you?
It is a good conversation. I am familiar with Stephen Bartlett, and it is such a powerful, but he does it in that British accent.
Yeah.
It's just that really very proper Queen style English in such that he has that very soft melody where you can just like penetrate to people and get their like raw emotions out. But it's
I think
yeah.
there's a real. I've only just discovered Stephen. Actually, I know he's quite big, but he only just popped up in my feed a little while ago. But I think with someone like that, there's a genuine level of empathy in Stephen, and it
Mm.
resonates, and that's why he gets the reactions he does.
Best one I've heard with him is with Jimmy Carr, the
I
comedian.
haven't watched that yet, but I should.
Oh, you're gonna love it. His mindset is amazing. Like the amount of you talk about effort and I guess creating your own destiny. Jimmy Carr is just unbelievable. Like, I mean, he's a comic, he's the king of one-liners, but the effort he put in and the journey he went along to get to that stage is and he
Mm.
unpacks it. Yeah, you're gonna.
Yeah, and I think it's so good to hear those stories as well. Like a lot of people have asked me about the Jordan Peterson story because everyone wants to know, how did you get access to him? And I think a lot of people, go, oh, well, she just shot Jordan Peterson. I don't think a lot of people have considered that behind that there is, 15, 20 years of solid work on me being a creative and me fine
Mm,
tuning all my skills, whether it's communication, whether it's tenacity, resilience, discipline, all the things that culminates in who I am today. That's taken a lifetime to do. So that when I did reach out to Jordan and I got the opportunity, I didn't blow it. I think some people want that opportunity too quickly, and they chase success too quickly without building who they are first.
how did you get all those followers on Instagram? Like, granted, that video went nuts, but how many
Yeah,
Instagram followers did you have before you post that video?
I had about 10,000, I think, and that was mostly CrossFit people, like in the CrossFit community. I adopted Instagram really early, so my Instagram profiles since 2010. It wasn't even called Instagram back then; it was called something else, and I thought it was just like a cool editing app. I didn't realize it was a social media app. So I've been on it a really long time. And just, yeah, I was like, what was it, like 2011 and 12 is when Instagram, I think, started to take off. And I was just posting a lot of who I was and what I did. And people seemed to enjoy that content back then.
Hmm.
Nowadays, with the amount of content that goes up every day, it's really hard to stand out. It's really hard to build a community now. But I have sensed a real shift in people wanting just honesty and rawness, and that's kind of what I do best. It's really easy to have this like perfectly shot and framed Instagram feed, and it's really easy to have this like super polished content that goes up, but you miss something in that, which is, the quick talk to camera is kind of where you are and who you would be if you were just having a face to face conversation. And I think people want that. They don't
Mm.
always want this super polished, curated version of you. They want a real, raw, unfiltered version of you,
And that's what
if that makes
ultimately
sense.
blew up your Instagram to where it's at now.
Yeah. And it's hard though, because I don't want to be known as that ranty woman on Instagram. But
Well, this is why we're
yeah.
doing the podcast because there's a whole other side and flavor to you.
Well, I think
You're good at the
I
rants. You're amazing at it.
oh, thank you. Maybe that could be my new job description, professional ranter. I think the rants come from a place of just like cutting through noise. I've worked in the advertising industry my whole life, and I've always been about trying to sell to people, right? Like that's my whole career. And what I have realized is that people are so out of touch with what we honestly really want from each other. You know, the way we engage with each other is not authentic on any level, and those rants cut through all that noise. So, like, if we could sit here and have this really polite conversation where you talk, I talk, you talk, I talk, and we don't actually get to know each other, we just have this really, like, polite conversation and say all the right things, and then that's be done. What people want is like the conversations they're having behind closed doors, the conversations they're
Mm.
like, I feel like this inside, and I can't say that out there. Because if I say that out there, someone's going to come at me. And it's like, so hang on a minute, you're dulling yourself down. You're being a watered down version of yourself because you're afraid that someone out there is going to come against you or hold it
I
against you or
think
whatever,
that's
which is
people just
why we
don't
have
want the
humor.
hassle. Like,
Yeah.
like to their very close friends, and they might have that conversation, but so fearful, as you said, just it's not worth all the bullshit, to
No, it's
express your
not.
true view, and then you're just going to get slammed. But
Yeah.
many people aren't also blessed with the gift of the gab, and they don't have a lot of resilience to have those conversations. But you do. Yeah. You're amazing at it.
Well, it's hard. It's not without its challenges, let me tell you. Like, I mean, the issue is sometimes I don't know when to shut up. There's parts of the cultural conversation that I certainly haven't inserted myself into, even though I do have very strong views, because I'm like, I am aware that it's more powerful to speak less often, if
If
that
you're at
makes sense.
if
So,
you're at a dinner party and no 20 people, fuck it, 10
yeah.
20 people, politics come up, do you bite your tongue, or do you think, I'm gonna chirp someone here and voice your opinion?
That's such a good question, because my friends know the real answer to that. The answer is I sit there and I wait. I am like a predator stalking their prey. I wait for people to say what they want to say, and I gauge how intelligent they are on the subject. If they are just saying things that have been parroted in social media screen grabs and headlines, I know, aha, you know nothing about what you're talking about. But if they come from a more nuanced perspective and they're sort of fleshing out their argument with a bit more consideration, I'll be like, okay, we could have a good discussion here. But every now and then I just like to shut people down and go, well, are you aware of this? And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, that came out yesterday, this is blah 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 blah. And then I just hit them with the facts, and they get all like,
Do you
anyway,
get
can someone pass the sauce?
do you get fulfillment out of it, or do you like, oh,
No, no. I don't get. It doesn't make me feel good, but I can't stand stupidity, and I can't tolerate um not. Oh, I hate saying that word. I don't want to say misinformation. I can't tolerate people having conviction in something that is so untrue. I feel like it's a disservice to me and them to not speak on it, if that makes sense.
hmm,
So if I know someone's talking utter nonsense, I have to interrupt them and go, stop, stop. You are not doing yourself any favors here. You look like an
yeah.
idiot.
Whereas I respect that, and sometimes I want to hope people just to poke the bear and let it rip.
Mm,
But at the same time, like my approach is when people are talking absolute garbage, I'm like, well, no one's listening. Like they can talk
mm,
whatever they want, but it's just not landing. Like anyone with a bit of grey matter between the ears really understands. Like, mate, you're off with the pixies, and all the best with
yeah.
that.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely a time and a place. I mean, if it's just some random stranger on the internet, absolutely, just goodbye. Just don't
Mm,
even waste my time. I'm not deliberately antagonistic. I think that's what I was trying to say is like, I'm not going to just poke the bear just for some enjoyment on my own. It has to be the right time. But I think that's the problem with social media is that because everyone has a platform for their voice, they feel that they're entitled to and everything they say should be listened to, which is not necessarily the case. There's times where you should be smacked down. And I've been smacked down plenty of times, rightfully so, over my time. And I think we all deserve that every now and then, just to be like, hey, come on, like,
mm.
a bit of humility is important. Um, but it's interesting. I find that in 2023, yeah, what are we? 23 now, 2023. I can't say it. Um, I'm less inclined to speak up unless I feel like it's needed now. Does that make sense?
Very much. It's things have rather smoothened out. We've got more freedoms back, and there's less need to. Well, we got different problems, different challenges, and it's.
Mm,
I know it's. I think society. There's a lot of scars that remain. Like we hate
yeah.
talking about COVID, but everyone wants to move on, and rightfully so. But everyone remembers, and no one wants to go back to that shit show.
Well, I think the interesting thing about that though is like, people just want to bottle up that trauma, which is kind of
Mm,
indicative of how we go through life anyway. You can sit there and bottle it up, but all those problems are coming to the surface, hence the inflation, utility costs, cost of living, interest rate rises. Like we are dealing with direct consequences for having our head in the sand and not speaking up. The truth always comes to the surface eventually. And I think a lot of people who perhaps were on the wrong side of history are now feeling the weight of those consequences. And not that I wish ill or bad situations on anyone, but sometimes people have to learn the hard way. And I think that you can only ignore the conversation for so long before, as you said before, the conversation will come knocking on your door. And I think we're seeing that with a couple of issues around COVID. You know, the irrefutable evidence is now kind of like there's a very big pink elephant in the room, and we can pretend it's not there, but sooner or later, we're going to have to address it.
Well, we're going to be wrapping up this podcast pretty soon, but I'd just like to finish with one more question. If you're not going to be a politician, where are you going to be in 12 months?
In 12 months, I'd like to think I have successfully built my online education course, which I'm in the process of doing now, which will hopefully afford me the freedom to go travel the world to shoot the portraits of the people that I have on my bucket list. Can't do that without income coming somewhere else. So, yeah.
Well, if you want to go travel in the world, take this guy with you. That's
absolutely.
I've done that a little bit once or twice. Become a tour guide. You get to do it for free. You get paid to do it.
Are you back in that now? Is it back to how it should be?
Well, no. My tours, as I'm contracting out, they're still half sold out. Because when people book a long multi-day tour, it's 12 months, 2 years in advance sometimes. But I've got a tour coming up, taking me to Melbourne, actually. I'm going to have 30 Americans starting in a week.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah. And then I've got my last tour. I've got 42. So we're finally sold out. It's taken that long to actually get those numbers. So it's not until next spring is when pre-pandemic numbers are actually returning. It's taken that fucking long.
Yeah, it's exhausting, isn't it? And the recovery process is, one of those things. But I think there's definitely a lot of people who are just like desperate to get back to some level of pre-COVID times. I'm certainly one of those people. I just like to put it all behind me if I could.
Well, yeah, there's lessons there, but I'm focusing forward the best I can. But Carly, thank you so much for the chin wag. You didn't have to do it.
My pleasure.
And please become a politician. I'd vote for you.
Maybe like in 10 years' time. I think that
whole calling
saga needs to.
Is it? You'd nail it. I don't know how I know. I just know.
We'll see what happens in a couple of years' time. But I'll never say never because God knows, who knows. But not on the cards for now.
All good. Well, thank you so much for the conversation.
My pleasure.
I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Ben.
You made it to the end of the podcast. All right. You know the drill. Give us a like, subscribe, or leave some juicy comments. And thank you so much for listening to Get Lost with the Travel Guide, where we talk all things travel, tourism, and adventure. See you next time.